Welcome back into the Penn Live Wrestling Podcast. Dustin Hockensmith here, joined once again by Dave Heckard. It's part 2 of our review of the 2020-21 wrestling season. Previously, we talked about the unique challenges that a pandemic year presented to wrestling, all kinds of different formats, including wearing masks. If you missed that episode, you want to catch it, you can access that and every other episode that we will do all season long by subscribing on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. This time around, we're going to talk about some of the individuals looking at last postseason, 3 state champions and 2 more state finalists from District 3. Dave, let's start with somebody that you should know pretty well at this point in time. Jake Lucas, your state champion at 215 pounds. He went 29-1, beat Josh Harkless from Wilson in the 215-pound state finals. Harkless had beaten him the week before out at the Super Regional in Altoona. How special was that year for him and for you as a coach to guide a kid to that upper echelon, to get to that promised land? You know how rare that is.
No, it is such a difficult thing to do. And I think that's the one thing, and all those guys, like to achieve a state title, even a state medal, and, you know, to do all that, you know, it's such a difficult task. And, you know, Jake is such a good kid, and, you know, just overcome adversity through his 4 years of wrestling, you know, matured, listened to coaching, and just, it all came together. And that's the best way I can describe it. At that state tournament, it all came together. He got the job done, wrestled an outstanding tournament, beat some good wrestlers there, on his way to then, you know, win the state final there in overtime. So it was incredible. Off to the Naval Academy. I talked to him actually quite a bit, and he's doing really well there. He did injure his shoulder, so he had surgery on his shoulder here. So he'll be missing probably this first year of wrestling season. But either way, the kid's in good spirits. He's really doing well on the academic side, on the military life side of things, and which I expected. I mean, you know, like I said, the kid's a great kid. He's going to do well whatever he does. So, yeah.
The uniqueness of him, and I, you know, I got to know him a good bit, and, you know, seeing the degree to which he sought out punishment, you know, because he understood the more punishment you take behind the scenes, the better you're going to get for whenever the real matches count. And to his credit, was just looking, he was looking, and this is the awesome thing about wrestling, is looking for a chance to lose. You know, that's what he's going for in practice, wherever he's looking for a chance to lose, because those are where the growth moments happen.
No doubt. And I mean, the biggest growth for him was in the practice room. And, you know, I mean, here's a kid that really his whole life, like, I mean, he was the big, strong kid. And he used to tell us, like, how elementary wrestling, like, he would just pin people and not even in wrestling moves, just being, you know, bigger and stronger. So now you have to take a kid who's done that his whole life and now teach him how to wrestle against people that, you know, at some point here, it's going to catch up, you know. And our coaching staff just did a great job. You know, Mark Murphy was his junior high coach, and who eventually helped me out at the high school level when Jake went through. And then Rustin Barrick, you know, son of, you know, former head coach Roger Barrick, who was my coach. Rustin wrestled at Bucknell and really was Jake's workout partner. And when I say, like, Jake came into the room and got completely torched, that happened every day. I mean, every day, Jake was a puddle, and what he went through to ultimately achieve what he achieved. There's not too many people out there that would consistently go through that to get to that goal. And you know, it was a testament to him, and a testament to Rustin as a coach. Just really got him ready to go. And like you said, you know, as much as it is my job to get kids to win, it's my job as a wrestling coach to make sure kids get losses too. You know, if you have a kid that goes through the season undefeated, you know, unless he's somebody that's just, you know, not losing, that you have, you know, you got to find them losses, and because there's so much growth from that. And you know, we did a great job at exposing, you know, Jake and all our guys. You know, we always wrestled a tough schedule, and, you know, take those losses, learn from them, improve, grow from those losses. And he did all that. And, you know, great kid, great work ethic. Couldn't have really happened to a better kid, in my opinion.
And I think, you know, you spell out kind of the interesting challenge of being a coach and having on one end of the spectrum, your first year kid that you're trying to get the basics installed. And then you have on the other hand, your high level kid who is in pursuit of a state title and trying to figure out all the buttons you need to push to get him what he needs and get him where he wants to go. And in this case, I mean, Rustin Barrick to picture Jake Lucas, 215 pounds, looked like he rejoiced in the idea of gaining weight and putting muscle on to get up to that 215. But to hear that he's a puddle with Rustin Barrick should tell you something about where Rustin's still at to this day.
Yeah, no doubt. And it was. And really those challenges, like you were saying before about, different levels of kids, it was even more challenging last year during that COVID year, because it hit like a point where, okay, so what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, are we going to pursue like this team thing where, if something goes down with COVID, now it affects everybody in the team? Or do you attend, do you attend less? Do you do less to try to make sure that the better guys in your team don't get sick? And, even last year, us as a team, I feel like, now we didn't make the playoffs. We missed it by one spot, but I had talked to our AD about I don't even think we were going to do it. And my only justification is I don't care what anybody says. I'll argue this point till I'm blue in the face, but of every team in District 3, of every wrestler in District 3, Jake had the best shot to win a state title. And not there's other guys that couldn't have done it, but I mean, when you looked at everybody, like he was the guy that had the shot of better shot than anybody in the district. So that being said, like it turned to him. Like at the end of the day, we had a team during the team season, but once that end of the year hit, our focus was on him and some of our individuals to get them safely to the highest, part of the individual season that they could get to. So it did offer some challenges, but obviously we got there and everything was good. So,
well, let's look at some of these other guys around District 3, and we'll stick with AAA since that's where we began with Jake here. But just looking at state champions in the AAA rank. So Caden Williams from Manheim Township. I'm sure you might not have studied him ultra closely, but you were at the same place as him. You saw him, at the District 3 championships, wrestles at 106 pounds. He and Camden, his twin brother, were huge for their weight classes. And we'll touch on the challenge that presented here in a moment. But Caden Williams, the interesting thing with him was he was pretty sick in Altoona for the super regional. And I think having to gut it out at that super regional round, kind of helped him. It helped pay some dividends at the state tournament too, when he got a little healthier, but he was accustomed to wrestling through that adversity, really wrestled a bunch of tight matches along the way, ended up winning that 106-pound title in AAA.
Yeah. Those two are tough. And I remember last year them being freshmen, you heard a little buzz down in the Lancaster Lebanon about them. And I talked to, Billy Chamberlain was, who's now the head coach at Cumber Valley. He was the head coach at Manheim. So I talked to him. I even talked to John Clark, their head coach, a little bit. I know him fairly half decent. And he was telling me how tough these two are. And then talking to some of the other coaches, like, hey, these two are the real deal. Well, then you get to the postseason and watch them wrestle. And their mat awareness, their wrestling IQ, they're just very, very tough, man. And both of them tough from the top position, which I feel like, when you on top, when you have the ability to ride people out at the high level, man, does that really open up doors for you? You know what I'm saying? As far as, beating good guys and winning big matches. But either way, those two are tough, and it's going to be exciting to see where their career takes them here the next 3 years, man. They're fun to watch too. So
I talked to both of them over the summer, and Caden Williams was on the U.S. cadet world team in Greco, went overseas to compete. Camden Williams, and it looks like they both said both of them hit a growth spurt. They're big already, and they both hit a growth spurt in the postseason. And Camden Williams did not ultimately make weight at the state championships, which you can kind of picture the how that weighs on a kid moving forward, and understood there. But Camden, was the one who made, I think, the bigger splash because of what he was able to do with Aiden Lewis from Cedar Cliff in the district semifinals, I believe, and using that Greco background of his own. And he ended up beating a state champ, Vinny Kokiri from Greater Latrobe at the super regional round. So certainly can see the upside there with both of them. But with Camden, I think it's not always as simple. And I spelled this out in the notes that I sent you too, but not always as simple as saying, well, it's an important wrestling tournament. Why can't you just make weight? With this age group and stuff like that, like things just happen, and it's not always as simple and easy and clear cut as we want to pick, as we want to make it.
It isn't. And I, in my coaching career, multiple times you've had guys miss weight, as
get in trouble or whatever too.
As a coach, you can't be there 24 hours of the day. You train them, you run them, you get their weights close, to where they need to be. Then they go home and you can't be there, so, and also you're dealing with 15, 16-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids. And, as much as we want to say, my kid would have made weight, or I'd have held him up all night making weight. I mean, the reality of the situation is, no, you wouldn't have, you know what I mean? It's tough, man. I think that, the kids deal with a lot, at the age that they're freshmen in high school, the growth spurt thing happening, all of that factors in. And I think, obviously that's a lesson learned, and hopefully, that never gets repeated again, from either of these two, which I don't think it will. And I mean, ultimately you can say that kid, maybe threw away a state title, didn't make weight and, could have won a state title. And, he
was the favorite in my eyes. Watching what he did with Aiden Lewis, who was a state runner up the year before, and watching him, throw around, and Vinny Kilkiri, who was a state champ the year before,
9-7 in the finals of the super region, man. It was
awesome match.
Yeah, great match. But just like you said, I mean, here's Kilkiri, who pinned the guy in the year before in the state finals, and Williams takes him out in the finals of the super regional. Just impressive two kids there, and definitely going to be fun to watch here moving forward. And as far as the weight thing, like I said, kids live and learn, and as coaches you learn too. And man, it's tough, and I don't know. I feel like as a coach, it was something the older I got, the more I worried about. Before a match, well, we came in right after school. I checked everybody's weight. I made sure they were on. And then an hour before weigh-ins, everybody had to show backup, and I checked it again, because guess what? Things happen between when you have them at school and when they come back for the match. And that's reality. They're kids. They don't make good decisions all the time, right? That's why they're kids. So you check them again, and then you have to take care of the guys that are over. And then right before weigh-ins, you're worried, because who knows what can. I'm telling you, it's constant. The worst part of any wrestling match for me was weigh-ins. If I could get everybody weighed in, skin check good, everything good to go for the match, well, now we're ready to wrestle. The wrestle will take care of itself. But everything else leading up to that point was the most nerve-wracking part for me, because some of that's uncontrollable by you as a coach. I think it's one of those deals where, the kids have to be accountable. Parents have to be accountable. Coaches have to be accountable. And again, it goes back to that all coming together piece that I mentioned before about, winning the state title. So
the uniqueness of wrestling, it's not just about showing up and competing and being prepared from a mental and physical standpoint. It's also the weight and the skin and all the things everything. That you got to control going into it.
Everything.
Karl Shindledecker, runner up, state silver, went 23-2. His rise as a wrestler going back to his freshman year coincided with a series that he had with one of your guys, Ben Mon. I remember being surprised with how tough Karl Shindledecker wrestled Ben Mon, and not really knowing much about Karl at that point. Well, he's been through it. He was a bronze medalist at 113 as a freshman. Yeah. He did not make it to the state tournament as a sophomore. He ran into Will Betancourt. It was the ultimate state champ at the district level, and got knocked out of, ended up being knocked out of that tournament there. Comes back, and I think validates, probably everything that you've seen from him. Just a tough kid. He's funky. He's long. I think what he did last year was add a little bit and be a little bit more attack oriented. He lost to Mac Church from Waynesburg in the state finals. He lost to Mac Church in the super regional finals as well. Tough matches, both of them. And Mac Church was, I think you could definitely say was the better kid of the two, but it was very close. And I thought Karl wrestled extremely well the entire postseason.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that was one of the matches. 120 pounds was one of the matches that was a final repeat, from the super region to the finals, where Church had beat Schindledecker 4-3 in the super regional in a good match. And then I actually thought Karl would win. I felt like, beating a tough guy 2 weeks in a row in the finals, the same guy, is a tough thing to do. But then Church beating 2-1 in ultimate tiebreaker. But, Karl has an uncanny ability to he's tough to score on, very tough to score on. And, he's quick. Again, I'm going to go back to the on top. Okay. Here's a kid that can turn you and ride you on top. Okay. And when you're talking high level matches, that 1 point, if you can ride somebody out, you know what I mean? If he's tough with legs and you can ride somebody out, you're going to be in matches. You want to beat somebody that you've never beaten before, ride him out. That's step one. Ride that guy out, take away that point. And, I think, Karl just from his sophomore year, in which, man, he just had a rough year that postseason, like you mentioned. To come back, last year during the COVID year and get it done and pick up a silver medal. And again, he's a physical kid. He's tough. He wrestles all the time. He's a seasoned wrestler. He's quick. He's also well coached. I mean, let's face it. Menser is a guy that repeatedly puts his high level wrestlers in good spots come the postseason every year, and his kids are ready to wrestle. And you take all that and you throw it and you mix it together. The outcome is, high medals. So it'll be interesting to see what he does again this year. I think, with what he did last year and the confidence coming back, he's definitely going to be District 3's, one of District 3's better wrestlers, and at least hope for a state title.
Yeah, just like you said about Jake, he's going to be high on that list of most likely District 3 guys to win that state title.
Sure,
A couple other guys I want to touch on quick. One's Matt Repos from Central Dauphin. Awesome wrestler. I thought he had an unbelievable district tournament. And then when he got to super regional, he's finished 7th at the state tournament. When he got to super regionals is when you really started to see kind of that philosophy that Jeff Swaggart and his crew used. And I can't blame him for it. And he spelled this out for me, the decision that you make when it comes to, especially the unique COVID circumstances. He was aiming to try to be quicker, fresher, better conditioned. And in a couple of these weight classes, Matt Repos, one of them, he was a little bit on the small side for that weight and ended up running into some big, strong 126s who were coming down to wrestle that weight class. And I thought in some of these matches, that was the difference. Can you just walk me through, what you're deciding as a coach, maybe in that situation, not even looking at this situation specifically, right. But the decision you have to make along with the kid and feeling where he's going to be the most comfortable, how you go about deciding, do you want to suck and get down and try to be among the bigger kids, or do you want to feel fresh and not worry about weight cutting and kind of deal with the consequences on the other end? There's no right or wrong answer, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I think first you got to start at hydration test. Like, at the beginning of the year, we all take a test, right? And it says you can get down to a certain weight, okay? Safely, health-wise, everything clear there. You can safely get down to a weight. My thing is, if you are certified at a weight, you need to get to that weight. Like, especially for the postseason. Now, again, I'm not second guessing Jeff. I'm not second guessing their decisions. Obviously the kid has to be in. You know what I mean? If the kid doesn't want to do it, it don't matter how much you want them to do it. But at the end of the day, you're going to get your optimal performance at the lowest weight that you can physically go. And if a kid is certified at 162, but instead wants to go 172, well, then guess what? That's fine. And you can feel fresh. But at the end of the day, there's guys going to be dropping from 180 pounds down to 172. And if the results aren't what you want, then I don't, it is what it is. Right. So, but last year being the COVID year, staying healthy, not sucking weight all year, there's something to that, and, I mean, heck, Repos is an incredible wrestler. And, at the end of the day, the kids have to make the decision to do it. But more than not, I mean, I would definitely err on the side of getting down to that lowest weight that you can, and being ready to go for the postseason, even if it isn't during the year. Hey, you might not wrestle, 145 pounds until the postseason. You might wrestle 152 all year, but then you're starting to descend for the end of the year and you get locked in at your lowest weight. And, I feel like that's the side that I always, especially in my later years, kind of went with. Now there were some times where maybe an upper weight, like a 215 would go heavyweight instead of 215 or vice versa. But for the most part, man, we try to get guys down to the lowest weight that they can legally go to and safely go to. So, and you did see that with him. As tough as he is, he hit that state level, and you did see a little bit of that size factor, at the super regional kick in there. I think this year, he could return at 126. I don't know what he's weighing, but and be on the big side, hopefully for himself, and capture a state title. So.
He's gotten bigger. I know that. I went to Central Dolphins practice last week. Didn't see him. He wasn't there, but I have seen some pictures, and he's weighing in around 140 pounds right now. And where that leads him in the postseason, we'll see. But I mean, again, you draw it up differently. And I think maybe his postseason outcome is different because he runs into a state champ in Hempfield area's Ethan Bergink, who is huge for the weight. And ends up losing there. I think he runs into kid Luke Simcox, really bright looking kid from Central Mountain. If you're not wrestling those guys at the super regional, maybe you're skipping that round, and maybe you're fresher. Maybe you get a chance to get the ball rolling a bit at the state championships. Matt Rupos is the kind of kid who can be a state finalist. He can be a state finalist this year. He'll still just be a junior. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's able to do. Really good, skilled, good mat awareness. Speaking of that, when you're talking about the Williams, I mean, he's the total package. I'm curious to see what he can do. Couple other kids I want to touch on real quick. One is Dylan Rhoden from Redland. Looked to me, he in the blood round at super regionals, happened right in front of me. Ended up injuring his knee. I believe it was torn ACL among other things in that matchup. But he looked, speaking of that 215 versus 285, he looked really, really good at 285. And I was pretty confident that he was going to be a state medalist of some kind, and then just had that taken away from him. The other one, Leighton Schmidt, who, at sectionals, you had your guy, one of the more bizarre scenes of the postseason was watching your guys kill that 45-minute clock because he had to wrestle back for that true second. And you got Schmidt in that round, but, Schmidt's back, Rhoden Haber's not. What'd you make of those two District 3 guys being, really good heavyweights?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Rhoden Haber, that we could, they came into individual season, and Brian brought him over to work out with Jake. So it was a great thing we had working there, like Jake and Rhoden Haber along with Rustin. I mean, it was perfect. Those three went, and there's some other guys that came in too. And I felt like, man, whenever that happened on that mat, it took it was awful. You know what I'm saying? And I agree with you. I think he was wrestling really well. He was making it to the state tournament. And that was a shame to see that happen the way it did. And even, I'm going to even say, even took some wind out of our sails. I mean, here's our, the guy that we work out with, the guy that we train with. I mean, the way it's looking, we're both going to go to the state tournament. We have another week together. Let's keep this train rolling. Then all of a sudden, boom, it's over with. And, but that being said, that kid looked darn good in the districts, the week before it, when he beat Schmick in the finals. I mean, Schmick is a good heavyweight, in my opinion. He's built well. He's got nice size to him. He can wrestle, all the above. And for him to handle Schmick the way he did in the finals there was pretty impressive. But this year, moving back into the heavyweight category, Schmick's going to be a tough customer to compete with, man. And I feel like as a senior, he's going to be tough. So, it'll be interesting to see that weight class. I know there's some other heavyweights around that, plan to make some noise too. And, but he's going to be a guy you're going to have to go through to get it. So.
All right, let's look at AA across District 3 and a few guys that really jumped out. One state champ, another state runner-up, and bronze medalist. So the super regional edition, I wanted to touch on this too, is, in AA, it's especially unique. Because you want to talk about, in AAA, you talked about the super regional and the odds of seeing those rematches. In AA, with so many guys moving on from sectionals to districts to regionals, then super regionals this time around, and then states, the odds of seeing the same guy 3 or 4 times are extraordinarily high. And there were some weights, and I don't really need to get into all the different ones, but there were some weights where a lot of these look like toss-up matches, where it just, you just needed to be on the winning end in a certain blood round or in the super regionals, you had some minor surprises. You had some guys surge and some guys not wrestle their best in super regionals. And so you ended up just with this interesting dynamic of just wrestling the same kid over and over and over again.
Yeah. And even in consecutive days, I felt like the double A sectional was a Saturday and then districts was on a Sunday. So you could wrestle a guy on Saturday and turn around and wrestle him again on the Sunday. And then, you're talking 5 different postseason tournaments. You're wrestling there from all the different, and again, seeing the same guy over and over. I was looking at some brackets from last year just to kind of refresh from doing this. And there was some guys, some matchups that happened repeatedly, you know what I mean? And, that is unfortunate. Again, though, I think the anomaly of a year that it was, what do? You do the best you can and try to at least we have a tournament and move forward and do the best you can, like I said. And they did that at the AA, AAA level. Are people going to be upset about different things? Sure. But again, we hope that this never has to happen again, where we, run, 2 tournaments in 2 days per se. And, but yeah, it did offer some challenges for sure. So
I want to look at a few of these kids who did get state medals, and starting with Michael Dugan, who he's an interesting one for you because you coached his older brother, Patrick. You coached Francis, I believe, for a year, his other older brother. And now Michael's at Boiling Springs, and you saw him. Nice run. I mean, he lost in the state tournament to the eventual state champ, Grant McKay from Laurel. I think that was a 1-0 match. But you saw Michael really start to realize a lot of the potential that he has. And one thing that really jumps out about Michael is that he is more so than most of your average wrestlers, a student of the sport and somebody who is relentless in terms of what he's trying to do to get better. And you started to see the fruits of that labor last year, and he's still got a couple seasons left here, Dave, to climb even higher on that podium.
Yeah, I talked to Trevor today, and I asked Trevor, I said, his coach, Trevor Byers, said, what makes him so special? What makes him so good? And Trevor's reply was his work ethic, and I mean, he's such a hard worker and he's very coachable and all that. I mean, my take on Michael Dugan is what he does well at the high school level is he understands and grasps the concept of pace. Okay. And in high school, that's tough to teach because a lot of times in high school, how many times does a Michael Dugan go the distance, or how many times does Michael Dugan have to use his pace to beat somebody? Probably very little, right? So it's tough to teach high school guys, hey, you got to push the pace. You got to stay on his head. You got to get that, and you got to go. That's going to beat the better guys. That is something oftentimes learned in college. Okay. And I feel like, in Michael's case, he is using that as one of his tools at a young age. Okay. That being said, when he does go and wrestle in college, that transition for Michael is going to be a lot easier than it is for most, because he grasps and understands that concept of how to push the pace. Right. And again, like just a hardworking, it seems to be very focused as well. So
yeah, focused and mature are 2 words I would use without a doubt. And yeah. I think being able to walk that line of realizing where your mistakes were or where your flaws were, understanding what those are without beating yourself up over them, being able to focus on the areas that need work without dwelling and them turning into a negative. I think he does that, from the way he speaks about it as well as anybody,
wrestling is such a mind game too. You know what I mean? And you battle your confidence, you battle your, what technique you should be doing, you battle so much. And to keep that focus and have that maturity like Michael does, I feel like is what kind of sets him apart, and pedigree too. You're going to, talk pedigree with a lot of these guys, but, the brothers, the understanding of, how to win big matches and all that is important too. And I know that his brothers have a pretty big impact on him. So, that obviously helps.
Yeah, for sure. He is going to be back, as far as I know, at 152 pounds as a junior. That's correct. That's where he played. He won bronze last year. Should be his length, his pace, and when he's on his offense, he's going to be as good as anybody. And I think
you said it right there. I think that's the key to Michael, staying on his offense. I feel like when I've seen him lose, I've seen him kind of go more reserved, you know what I mean? And again, that's who you're wrestling, and I understand that. But if Michael consistently attacks, I mean, he's going to be tough to beat, very tough to beat.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, what he's got in store for us as a junior.
Yeah.
Levi Haynes from Biglerville won his first state title, and I don't know how much you've really tracked Levi from the jump, but certainly his pedigree was apparent right away. I think you've crossed paths with him at some tournaments and stuff along the way, but two-time state finalist before he got to the top of the mountain last year. He had lost to Sheldon Seymour from Troy, who was a multi-time state champion. He lost as a sophomore to Ryan Crookham, who, nationally elite guy himself. And now last year, pretty dominant the entire way through the postseason to get that first state title at 138 pounds. And now it looks like, just as an aside, Levi I think he's going to be around 160 pounds. So he's, not afraid to keep climbing up that lineup. He's looking to be big, strong, and healthy as he can be, but no secrets here about how good this kid was. And I think it was just a matter of time for him to get that state gold, probably just a matter of time coming off a world team appearance and winning at Who's Number One over the summer and pushing himself beyond the limits. I mean, we talked about focus and maturity with Michael Dugan. Those would be two huge words to describe Levi Haynes as well.
No, you're right. I mean, you mentioned pedigree. His dad beat me in the state finals my junior year, and was just a tough wrestler, big, strong guy. And again, people need to understand something, man. When it comes to pedigree, when dad's a state champ or dad's a coach, and look, here's where it comes in, and that's expectations. Like when that kid walks out of that house, or that kid walks in that house from practice, like the expectations in that house are going to be different than most, right? Like your dad's coach, dad's a state champ, dad knows. Well, guess what? If you being good means that we have to run you up to M2 3 days a week, well, then that's what we're going to do that, and you're going to like it. You know what I mean? So The pedigree, expectations, that means everything. And again, now that being said, you still have to do it. Like Levi still has to go to the workouts. He still has to buy in. And dude, he's a tremendous wrestler and just was dominating last year. A dominant performance in states. I think he pinned a guy in the state finals too, I believe. And it's going to be exciting to see at the next level. And another guy that just keeps attacking. And, we had a year where 2 years ago, David Taylor came down and did a freestyle clinic at Cumberland Valley. And Levi, obviously being a member of the M2 club, would come in a lot. And, he'd show up early and be changing into his shoes and all that. And I'd have a chance to sit and chat with him a little. What a nice kid, too. And look, here's the deal. I hope listeners out there, if you're parents, whatever, I hope you're understanding what we're saying here. I mean, all these kids that we're talking about that are really good, and it's something how we all say how, for the most part, they're all good kids, right? The Michael Dugan, well, he's mature, he's a good kid, he works hard. Well, Levi Haynes, he's a good kid, he works hard. Jake Lucas, state champ, good kid, he works hard. Look, winning and losing are byproducts of how you live your life off the mat. Right? Like the things that you do outside of the wrestling room means so much as well. And these guys are good kids, man. They are nice kids. They are well-mannered. But man, I tell you what, you get them on the wrestling mat and it is a totally different monster. But no, I think Levi Haynes is a phenomenal wrestler. And again, man, I expect him to grab another state title here for himself, as well as District 3 and his hometown. So.
And I think with him, it was just interesting following along and thinking about in terms of recruiting and getting to the next level. He wasn't necessarily in that elite of the elite recruits.
Right.
He wasn't in that category yet. But what he's done, and you can see the growth trajectory, is because of his attitude and because how much he loves the grind of it, and he focuses on the process of it. You'll hear elite wrestlers all the time, and it's probably true of life and any other sport too, but just when you're focused on the process and not the results of it, especially in wrestling, it's the kind of thing that can pay dividends. Now you see him in that national elite of the elite. And when you talk about how elite he really is with that intangible mentality kind of thing, you can picture him now committed to Penn State. You can picture him in Cale Sanderson's program and only continuing to climb, because when you get to that, and you can speak to this too, but when you get out of high school and into that college level, the amount of focus, the amount of commitment, the amount that you have to love the grind of it can really separate whether you're going to be an All-American versus whether you're going to be a champ, whether you're going to be an NCAA qualifier or whether you're going to be an All-American. Yeah. And he's got that intangible attribute at a extremely high level. And I think he's a perfect fit for Cael Sanderson.
I agree with you. I mean, he's a rare breed, right? Like, I mean, the guys that are able to do that, to grow and withstand it and accept the difficulty of the sport and make it part of who they are. And like you said, buy into the whole process thing. They're rare, very rare. And, that kid has got it going on in the wrestling world, man. And he's going to be tough, and he'll fit right into that mold up at Penn State too, right into it. So, and again, once he gets up there and those guys get your hands on, their hands on you, they make things happen. So, I'm kind of excited to see where his career takes him.
For sure. And just lastly on Levi, the 3 times a week to M2, that's a 2-hour drive. So you think about
4 hours in a car.
Commitment from Levi and also commitment from Ken to make that drive. And as a coach, to be humble enough to say, like, David Taylor and that group up there can bring something to you and teach you in a way that I can't. So the humility as your coach and your dad to drive a 4-hour round trip, to have somebody else coach your kid. I mean, I just found that part of it impressive too.
No, it is. And I mean, I think, like, here's the deal, coaches, right? It's not about you. Right. It's not about you. It's not about, and Ken, right, being the wrestler that he was, he gets that. Like, right. Like, I mean, it's not about you. It's not about you as a coach. It's about the kids. And I think Ken, it's humility to it. Yeah. All that. But again, like, look, as a coach, if I know somebody out there can come in and teach something better than I can teach it, whether that be a simple technique, let's say, so-and-so can come in, he can teach how to get out of legs better than I can. Well, guess what? He's coming in my room. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. It's not nothing to do with me. Right. Like, I mean, and coaches, if you're listening out there and you think it is about you, you're in it for the wrong reasons. So, at the end of the day, put your athletes in the best position to improve, to win and get better, for sure.
This sport's amazing because you talked about the common thread of humility and hardworking and being good kids. Like, wrestling has a way of just knocking the ego right out of you. There are very few people that I've come across in my time, covering the sport that have had issues with ego or pride or whatever. Wrestling is almost self-regulating in a way.
It is. And then you add a little karma into the situation too. And it's always good. You know what I mean? And again, as good as you think you are, there's someone out there that's better. Right. Like, even here we are talking about Haines. I mean, he got upset in the finals of Super 32 this fall, so, I mean, at the end of the day, what's that do for him? Well, I'll tell you what, it probably makes him work a little harder. It makes all his opponents say, oh no, you know what I mean? This kid just lost, look out, so, wrestling is again, and that's why I love the sport. I feel like of all the sports I've played, I played football, and definitely one of my favorites. It was fun, baseball and soccer and different sports in my life. The sport of wrestling teaches you more about life than any other sport. I stand behind that comment, and the ups and downs and learning how. There's not too many times in my life as an adult that I've done anything more difficult than going through like conditioning at the end of wrestling practice. Right. Like, I mean, I'm serious. Like, a coach sitting there blowing the whistle in your face, telling you after 2 hours of practice to get off the bottom. You know what I mean? To be down flat on your stomach, have a guy on top of you and know that, like, you have to work out of this for practice, like, in order to leave this room. Like, man, it teaches you so much. And as you know, Dustin, and the cool part about that is you don't have to be an elite level wrestler to gain the values of the sport of wrestling. Right. Like you can be a first year wrestler. You can be a second year wrestler. You can wrestle JV your whole life. It doesn't matter. The fact that you are committed to the sport of wrestling is going to teach you more in life than any other sport.
I mean, just the idea of getting pushed out of your comfort zone, and that's where the growth happens, whether you're talking about life or wrestling. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt.
One other name quick I want to touch on, just a fascinating case here. Riley Robell from Bishop McDevitt, sophomore last year, was a state qualifier at 182 pounds. Well, guess what? He set out to be the best football player and the best 285-pound kid he could possibly be in the span of less than 1 year. So you talk about his routine and all the shakes and stuff that he had to choke down to kind of make that jump. And he wrestled last year around 250 pounds. He wrestled like a 182 pounder. You saw how dominant he was and wrestled the Swinski kid from Bermudian and got to the state finals and ran into, a different type of adversity when he got there. And, as soon as he came off the mat, I had a chance to talk to him, and basically he said, Nathan Taylor from Brookville was a senior. He had been in a little bit more of these elevated situations than Riley had been. And when it came to the state final, it was about pacing himself. He got himself too tired too quickly. And he just kind of admitted that he felt the pressure of the situation. I think it's just one of those things that you can't really quantify, being a sophomore at a new weight and being in a new situation against a senior who had been there before. And it's understandable. It
is. And man, on him, man, what a stud heavyweight. I mean, this guy, listen, sophomore, I think you said a 250-pound sophomore state runner-up. And I think his body type, how he wrestles, he's going to be a high-end recruit. You mark my words on that. I mean, he is going to be a heavily sought-after heavyweight. So last year during the postseason, they would bring him over to once in a while to work out with. I told you that Jake and Rhoden Haber were there in our earlier conversation. He would come over, and I mean, listen, he got the best of both those two at different times. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was a bear on top. He was a right side mount. He was tough on top. He'd ride his nice little inside wrist ride and keep Jake down. You know what I mean? Jake couldn't get off the bottom. He's like, Jesus, coach, this guy is big. He's strong. Like, yeah, he is, man. And he's going to be real tough to beat. And I see him taking home a gold this year. I do. And again, can things happen? Sure. But if I had to put money on it, if I had to pick a heavyweight, it would be him. And, he's just, and here's the deal for Mike and the Crusaders. You have him at heavyweight. That's 6 points you're getting every match, right? You have a good heavyweight. He's pinning people. So, you have a good heavyweight like that as a team. Sure, individual wise, he's going to do tremendous, but for the team, I mean, he's going to collect 6 points. And like you said, in about 20 seconds every match. So, the important thing for him, like we had talked about, is getting him good competition throughout the year. And I think, I'll tell you what, I'm excited to see this in a couple of weeks here at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic, the Nazareth heavyweight, the McKinney kid who was a state runner-up last year, should have won it. And him, I mean, that should be a good match, good heavyweight match at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic in a few weeks. So
you just sold a few tickets there, right there.
Yeah, I might have.
As well, you should. You have the Kinney kid who's now a sophomore, a little bit longer than Riley is. You have Riley who's going to be a junior, and what will be interesting is Bishop McDevitt, having played deep into the postseason in football and what he's doing on the football field, and how close are you in that opening weekend to what you're going to be in March. That'll be interesting to follow along with. And, you talk about him being a big time recruit as a heavyweight. He certainly looks like he's going to be a big time recruit as a two-way defensive lineman, offensive lineman as well. He's going to be a kid in about a year where he's going to get to pick his path. And how rare that is to be able to kind of pick between two sports like that, kind of a testament to how good Riley Robell is in both of those sports.
It is, man. Rare breed. And again, a nice kid, comes from a good family. And, I feel like we'll, be exciting to see where he ends up and what he does here the next couple of years. But, look out on the gridiron and on the wrestling mat for that kid, for sure.
There you go. Dave Heckard helping us cover the 2020 and 2021 season here on the PennLive Wrestling Podcast. We will be turning the page and looking ahead to the season coming up and some of these guys in their situations and some of these teams. We'll look at divisions and all that stuff. Follow along all season, Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. For Dave Heckard, I'm Dustin Hockensmith, and we will see you next time on the PennLive